Shall we start? Okay, welcome. So welcome to ReactJS 24. I'm just going to give a very brief introduction. My name is Claudia. I am Italian, and I work as a software engineer for YLD in Portugal, where I basically do what probably most of you do, which is I do some sort of digital tech stuff with our very much beloved React, which is actually the main reason why we are all here, right? Because ReactJS 24 is all about getting together developers to discuss opinions, share experiences, make comments, just, get together as a community with React at the center of it. But there's one specific and very special detail about this event, which is the fact that on the stage, we only have women, very special women. And this is because these events want to act as a springboard for them to enhance their careers or to improve their contacts and their contribution to the tech world. And in fact, this is such a good initiative that last year we even won a prize for it. We won the prize for the most impactful contribution to the community 2022 at the Open Source Award ceremony. So I have to brag about it because I'm very proud of it. And I'm actually going to go off the lines already, and I'm going to start with the thank you and well done for everyone who is organizing this, sponsoring and participating. Victoria, Hassan, Christine, everyone at YLD that is, helping making this happen, but also to everybody that participates to it, because, this wouldn't have any value if you wouldn't be here attending it. So it's super thank you for having a full room attending this event again. So good applause for you all. So just a couple of details before we start. Well, 6 p.m., open doors. If you're not here, you're late. 6:45, kickoff of the meetup. We're going to have the very first talk at 7. It's about 20 minutes talk. Then we'll go for the second talk at 7:25. Then we will have a 30 minutes break where we can interact with each other, do some networking. And I'm very pleased to say that we will have also pizza, hopefully not with pineapple. And then we'll be back for the third talk at 8:20. And keep all your questions. I'll explain you how to do it, but we'll do a question and answer section at the very end of the 3 talks. So we'll have about 30 minutes moment for us to just, share opinions or discuss any doubts you may have or you want to ask to our amazing speakers. Then we'll have a brief wrap up. And then for those of you who are keen to have a beer and do some networking, we'll be going to the Horse and the Groom later at 9:30 p.m. I'll give you the address afterwards because I don't know it off by heart. Sorry, I'm not from London. Also, one little detail that I was going to forget, but I remembered Vic because she told me 3 times, don't forget to say that. During the pizza break, we'll actually provide some tickets inside a cup. We're going to do basically a raffle. So for 2 lucky ones, there will be a goodie bag. So stay tuned. So let's see what we're actually going to talk about tonight. We have 3 very interesting talks. The first one will be about easy, breezy, beautiful, not a clever Go, but actually a React testing library. This will be presented by Ellie, Patten. Then we'll have the second talk, which is about a state management library called Teaful. It will be introduced by Zlopasa. And then we'll have a talk by Zuffolini about inclusive workplace without overthinking it. So just a couple of logistics. Be nice. Don't say bad words. They used to tell me that we're going to wash your mouth with soap if you say bad things. So let's be all nice. Use appropriate language. About the questions. So I'll give you now a very special QR code that does a lot of stuff. Basically, we're not going to interrupt the talks we're not going to interrupt the speakers while they're doing the talks. We'll provide you a link through which you can go to Slido and place your questions there. Don't be afraid. You can actually place anonymous questions if you don't want to, say them out loud. I'll just ask you to please state who is the question for, so that makes my life easier because I can get lost with all the nervous stuff. And you can actually put your questions throughout the whole talks, and you can also upvote them if you're more interested in one or another. A bit of spread the word. So if you haven't done so, you can follow us on social media with those tags that are over there in the slide. Also, if you want to share your experience here, say something about what happened that you enjoyed. Anyway, just remember to hashtag it ReactJS Girls or ReactJS. There's a couple of also links over there that might be useful for you. We're not doing a live session today, but this presentation will be available in our YouTube channel soon. So, and here we go. The QR code I promised. It does a lot of stuff. You can actually place questions through it. You can follow us. You can join us. You can see all the recordings from the preview talks. You can find out about YLD. And also, if you're interested in YLD, you can also see our openings there. So before starting with our great talks, let's just give, a little moment to our organizer and sponsor YLD. So I'm going to give the stage to Alexandra. Here she is, just to come and talk to you about YLD for a little moment.
Hello. This is my first time doing a public talk, so please bear with me. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. So my name's Alex. I'm one of the talent partners at YLD. Sorry. So just before we go on, I'll just let you know a little bit about us and what we do as a company. So we're a software design and engineering consultancy, and we have been growing rapidly as we continue to work with a diverse range of companies globally across various industries. So we've worked with various different companies that work in health tech, fintech, publishing, energy. You can actually see some of the clients that we've worked with here as well. So our main goal is to help our clients expand and leave them in a much better place than we've found them in some ways. And so we share a lot of our expert knowledge and build them into having future-proof skills and capabilities. Very exciting place to be. We work with lots of different clients at the moment as well. And obviously, from the talent team, it would be rude for me not to say that we are hiring. So we're always looking for talented individuals as well. So if you want to have a chat about any of that, so mainly across the UK and Portugal, anyone in a YLD shirt, please come and speak to us. I'll be hovering around. So, but yeah, enjoy the evening and thank you.
Thank you. I'll just keep it. You hand it over. So we gave you a good excuse to come to Portugal, right? So thank you, Alexander. I'm just going to call over now a representative of Accurx, who is our sponsor tonight. So would you please come and join us?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I was going to tell you a joke, but I'm nervous, so you can all pretend to laugh. My name is Hamdallah. I am a products engineer here at Accurx. Welcome. It's really exciting to have all of you here. At Accurx, if you are just hearing about Accurx for the first time, our mission is to change lives by bringing patients and healthcare teams together. We know our communication is a very big problem with healthcare, and we are trying our best to solve this problem. We work with NHS, both GP and secondary care, to build software that integrates communication across healthcare system to make NHS professionals happier and to make our patients healthier and happier. Currently, we are being used by 98% of GP. We intend to get to 100%. And more than 54 million patients use Accurx. If you have ever received messages from your GP, you probably have used Accurx before. Some practical things to take note of. We have toilets just across right from there. We have notes. If you can look back, we have signposts that says toilets this way. If you go just around the corner, we have the accessible toilets. And in the event of fire, because, we don't expect fires, we have fire exits. Just follow the fire exit symbol here and also there. And we have a meeting point, and that's at the Us and Groom pub back. It's just across the street from here. Not the pub itself, please. The pub car parks. Lastly, we use ReactJS here at Accurx, and we are currently hiring for senior and staff engineering roles. And if you are interested, please speak to anybody with this color of lanyard, the blue one. All right, everybody, welcome and have a nice evening.
Thank you. All right, time to start. Let's ask Ellie Patten to actually come and join us here on the stage. Ellie is a senior software engineer here at Accurx. She is here with her best friends, who I can't see now, but I'm sure she will introduce her to you. Other than being a software developer, she's also an amazing drawer, so I really recommend you go and stalk her images because they're really nice. And she's actually going to present us something about React testing library, but I won't say anything anymore because I'll leave her the surprise.
All right, so my talk's called Easy, Breezy, Beautiful. It's not cover girl for anyone who did used to watch a lot of America's Next Top Model and had that slogan kind of baked into their brain. But we're talking about testing your UI components using React testing library. So before I start talking about that, I figured I'd better introduce myself. My name is Ellie. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. I'm a senior product engineer here at Accurx, and I've been working with React for about 5 years now, in a few different startups around London. I'm also a dog mum. My dog's out for a walk at the moment, but some of you might have seen her around earlier on or heard her just making a bit of a fuss. I like to play D&D, and I like to draw. So today, I really wanted to talk about unit testing because I know it's something that a lot of us can find quite painful. We can find it quite difficult. It can kind of be very boring, like it seems very dull. And sometimes we just dread it so much that we really put it off until the very end of building a feature or building our components. And it can be quite hard to even learn the best practice for it and begin to feel confident about what you're doing with testing. So I definitely used to be that person who used to sort of groan when it was time to write my unit tests. It was just, I built something fun that I care about. I guess I better write some tests for it. But I've been lucky enough to have some really great mentors who have basically helped me invest time in learning how to figure out what the best practices are and how to feel confident in the tests I'm writing. And that's given me a lot of confidence in writing tests, and it's kind of taken a lot of the pain away from it. So now that that's kind of like, it's almost become second nature to me at this point. And I figured it would be nice to kind of share what kind of tips I tend to follow, like what those guiding principles are that help me to find it a little bit less painful. So I'm going to talk about how I approach unit testing, specifically for React components, mainly with React testing library and Jest, and particularly kind of following the principle of our tests being close to how the user would experience our product. And I'm hoping that I can give you just some ideas about like how you can get a better understanding of how to write good unit tests, how to make writing them a bit easier, how to make them a bit more effective, and hopefully a couple of tips to help you make better decisions, or at least have some kind of food for thought that you can kind of consider next time you are making decisions around testing. And a couple of tips as well on how to avoid flakiness, which is a topic that has been on my mind so much lately. I like to see people who know the pain. So I figure any good tech talk needs to have an example app that I invested way too much time into. So I came up with, it's not the most original idea, so I don't know why I phrase it that way, but this app that is very simple. It just sort of has a title, an amazing title, which is, I think I called it an amazing cat pic generator. It has the date on it. It has a button. You click the button. We hook up to the Unsplash API, fetch a random picture of a cat, show it on the screen. So I had a lot of fun with this, mainly because I just got to look at cat pictures for, honestly, more hours than I'd like to admit. As part of this app, we've obviously got error states. I figured there's going to be a little bit of error handling so that, you know, if something goes wrong, making a network request or fetching those pictures, we show an error. And I've got kind of an edge case as well, which is where, for example, you press the button the first time, you get a picture of a cat. Maybe the second time you try and press the button and get another cat picture, you know, maybe your network connection fails, maybe something goes wrong. And we still show you the picture that you saw before, but we also show you that error state. So this is, when I give a couple of examples, this is kind of going to be the example app that I'm thinking about, and we're going to think a little bit about how we might test this. Before we dive in, I kind of wanted to give a little bit of a caveat. I am focusing on React testing library, and I'm focusing a little bit on Jest as well, mainly because that's where my experience has been most recently, but also because I think those are really good, genuinely really good tools for like testing your components in a way that is similar to how a user would experience them. I recognize not everyone might be using these, but hopefully people can still come away with like some high-level ideas that can be applicable to whatever you are using for your tests. And if not, maybe you'll just learn something about React testing library that you didn't know. And it is worth bearing in mind that I'm going to be telling you about things that I personally find helpful. There are always other ways of doing things. There are always other options. And as kind of with everything, there are probably areas where you might want to make compromises. So, you know, if I'm saying, oh, this is an excellent way to write your test and you're going to get the best coverage, you know, you might argue, yeah, that's great, but actually my tests are going to be really slow. So it's just kind of worth bearing in mind that there are going to be compromises to be made. And, you know, I'm not sort of dictating to you how you should do things, but hopefully giving you some things you can think about. And then, you know, when you apply it to your environment, to the kind of setup that you have, the environment you're working in, like the company you work for, the app you're building, you can kind of just think, does this apply here? Does this feel right? Does this match with our priorities? So I can hear my breathing, but that's fine. So let's dive in. My first piece of advice is to just write really clear test descriptions. So for me, I always feel like my tests can act as a good source of documentation. So I try and write my tests to describe kind of exactly how my component should act, exactly what the expected behavior should be, exactly what kind of flows we're expecting. And that way, even if my component ends up, you know, maybe my component code isn't the most readable, maybe it's very complicated, maybe over time it's had more and more functionality built on top of it, and it can be quite hard for somebody new to the code base to dig into it. Regardless of whatever your component looks like, other developers should be able to come to your tests, give them a read, see, oh, I understand how this component is supposed to work now, I understand the flows. So that's one reason I really like to have some like really clear descriptions. I also try and make them kind of focused around the user a little bit. So rather than kind of making these tests sound really technical, talking about kind of like rendering and state, I try and talk about like, what does this actually mean for the user? Like, what are we actually testing here? What is the state for? What are we displaying? What are we rendering? So I've got some examples that I don't love when I come across them, which are when we're sort of saying, I think this one comes in create React app, renders correctly or renders without crashing. And yeah, it's not very descriptive. What does it mean for this component to render correctly? I don't know. And, you know, other tests that say sort of handles a click, calls a function. Again, that doesn't really tell us what I'm trying to adjust this mic so I can't hear my heavy breathing. Oh, it got worse. Regret. Yeah, we don't know what this button is doing. This isn't very descriptive. We're just talking about implementation here. So a better way that I might rewrite this test is I might talk about, you know, for my cat app, instead of renders correctly, I'm going to say we're displaying a heading and a date. I might also say it displays that sort of placeholder image section you might have seen before anyone's clicked a button. And rather than talking about handling a click, I'm going to talk about when the user clicks give me a new cat picture, we're going to fetch and display a picture of a cat. So you can already see this is telling us a lot more about, even if you've forgotten about the cat app, hopefully this gives you some idea of what that looks like. Whereas the example on the left, it could be anything. My second tip is around what exactly I think it's good to cover in your tests. So I think it goes without saying, we want to cover what the user is going to experience, what should happen in your component, the happy path. But that's not all. We want to test these default states, we want to test what should happen, but we also want to test the error states, maybe the loading states, the edge cases, anything that could happen, even if you're thinking, oh, it probably doesn't happen often, it might be worth thinking about whether it's still worth testing. So, for example, in the app I've mentioned, we're going to test that happy path of showing a cat picture when you click the button, but we're also going to test this error state as well, so that we can make sure that when when there is an error, when we're trying to fetch a cat picture, that's being handled, that our app doesn't just fully fall apart and crash. And we can test that we're showing something useful to the user as well. And I would also test this sort of edge casey scenario, which it can be a little bit more awkward to test and a little bit more awkward to explain. But to test those kind of weird edge cases like, oh, we've already got a cat picture, but we're trying to fetch another one. It doesn't quite work. Might as well keep the cat picture there, test that still appears correctly, and test that the error state shows up. One of the things I wanted to highlight, this is quite specific to React testing library, is that you can sometimes get accessibility testing for free. React testing library has this great set of selectors that you can use to kind of investigate what elements are showing in the document. So, for example, there's this get by role selector, which you can use to find elements based on their accessible roles. So things like buttons, inputs, form fields, checkboxes, links, all those kind of accessible elements that that you might be using. And if you use something like get by role, you can basically not only look for your elements appearing in your document, but you can check they have the correct sort of semantic accessible names. So that's a really handy thing for me that I use quite a lot, because it's handy to see, oh yeah, I've got my basic accessibility baked in. Similarly, you can use, got up here, get by alt text. So if you're searching for an image, you can find that image using the alt text, and you're not only checking that your image is there, but you're also checking it has some alt text, which is something that you always want to aim for, so that so your images have text rather than just having the image presentation. So I want to talk a little bit about mocking. I don't want to go too deep into it, because there's actually a really great talk all about mocking and using jest. I think it was the last React Girls Meetup by Millicent Bath, and I think that's a really great resource to learn more about mocking. But I want to talk a little bit on how to make decisions about when mocking is relevant to your tests. These are a few examples of times that I think it's a good idea to use mocks. I think the only sort of non-negotiable one of these is network calls. If you're testing a component that makes a network call, please always mock that network call, because you don't want to make real network calls in tests. If I'm hitting the Unsplash API every time I run my tests, they're going to actually block me, which isn't great. At the same time, or maybe even more importantly, my unit tests are going to be reliant on somebody else's API, and that's not really my unit. That's going beyond my unit. We can end up with slower tests. We can end up with timeout issues. Something I've seen a lot recently. Nish knows about it at the back. And you can end up with just a noisy errors in your console as well, from all your sort of failed network, attempted network connections when you're attempting to connect to a server that you don't have access to. So yeah, this is something I've seen flaky tests appear from. So that's the only one of these I'd say is non-negotiable. I can't really think of any reason you'd want to make network calls in your unit tests. But a couple of other situations where you might want to use mocks are if you've got very complex child components being rendered, things that really make it very difficult to test what you're working on without going way down a rabbit hole, or very well tested shared functions that you've got, whether those are from your own code base or whether you're importing them from some kind of external library, like something like React Router. It can be handy to mock out the routing related functions there so you're not inadvertently testing the whole routing functionality that's implemented by a third party. But it's also important to consider when we don't want to use mocks, because the more mocking you do in your tests, even though it might feel like it makes your life a little bit easier, they might even run a little bit faster, it's taking us further away from reality, and that's taking value away from your tests. It's basically taking away testing. So what I like to think about when I'm considering mocking something in a test is just, am I doing this just to make my life that little bit easier? Or is there actually a much better reason for it? And what is the cost of not the cost of not mocking? What is the cost of mocking this component or this function? What might I miss? What bugs might come up that I would just have no idea of because I've mocked it? So I really want to talk about one of the biggest things that has tripped me up, like just time and time again, and actually has been really relevant to me recently, which is the subject of flaky tests, which is one of those things that's just always kind of been a thing I've had a little bit of dread about. Like when I've sort of seen our pipelines looking a bit dodgy, when I've seen, oh, this random test has failed on my PR, I always kind of tended to be the person that just went, oh, I don't know what that is. That seems totally unrelated. I'm just going to hit rerun quietly and kind of sneak back away into my corner and pretend I didn't see it. Maybe because they're difficult to debug. And there are basically a lot of reasons you might have flaky tests. But I want to talk about one that I've come across a lot recently, and I think is also probably one of the hardest ones to debug, which is when you have flaky tests because there's some kind of, I don't know if this is the technical term, but like leakiness in your tests. And what I mean by that is that when your tests aren't like fully independent of one another, when, you know, something happening in one test has a knock-on effect to your next tests, which has a knock-on effect to your other ones, and then suddenly you can end up with, you know, one test failing randomly, and you look at the test file and you think everything looks great here, but it's something weird that happened like 3 tests ago in a totally different test file, and you could have to go through every single test file in your code base to try to figure out which one that is. So the reasons you can end up with this issue where your tests are kind of leaking into each other and affecting one another, it could be, you could have things like your component state being changed in one test, and, you know, maybe it's not being reset in some way, or it's, you know, it's persisting into your other tests. It could be maybe you're using Redux, and if you set up the state maybe only once, then all of your tests might be using the same state. You change the state in one test, the other one goes to use it. That state's not looking how you expect it to be because it's been changed by a different test. Or maybe you're using some mocks in your test file, and you're not resetting them. And then in the later, you know, you're changing the value of those mocks at one point, going into another test, expecting them to do something totally different. But they're all having this sort of knock-on effect on each other. And this is one of the sites that greeted me the other day when I was trying to deploy. Nobody loves to see this many failed pipelines when you're trying to release. So I wanted to give a bit of an example of like what that actually looks like and what that might mean. So this is kind of an example where we're setting up a mock at the start of our tests, and we're rendering a component at the start of the test. Now we might have like 10 tests in this file. They're all at this point using the same component. They're using the same mock. So any changes we make in any of those earlier tests, those are going to basically be passed down and persist to the later tests, which can end you up in that situation where your tests just aren't independent of each other. They're all having an impact on each other. And you'll end up getting different results when you run your test on its own versus when you run it as part of the whole suite. Like maybe then it starts failing and you're kind of like, damn it, why can't it just work the same as it worked on its own? So here's how you might make it a little bit better. So in this situation, we've got kind of a before each block where we're setting up our mocks, and after each test runs, we're resetting them. this means that like the kind of tally of the number of times that this mock has been called is reset each time. We're basically just starting from a fresh slate rather than having a situation where our tests impact one another. And then this is where we're actually going to use those mocks that we've set up and kind of change the value of them each time. So I've got a test here where I want to check that when I click my button and I make a successful network call, I get a cat picture. So we're setting up our mock to have a success value, whatever that looks like, whatever that object is. We're clicking our button, we're looking for the image, and we're checking that the helper function that makes that network call has been called once. Then in our second test, I'm going to set up that mock a little bit differently. So in our second test, I want to check that if the API returns a network error, the app doesn't crash. We show a nice error in the UI. And so in this one, yeah, we set up the mocks with a different value. And then again, we can sort of click the button. Our mocks have still been called once. And this is my final tip, which seems really straightforward, but it's not always, which is just to make sure your tests fail. Because a test that doesn't fail isn't particularly useful. We want to know when there's a bug in our code. Like, that's the reason our tests are there at the end of the day. It's to catch something so that we don't have to be looking for it. But if your test never fails, it's not doing that job at all. And it's almost worse to have that test that doesn't ever fail than to have no test at all, because you'll be thinking, oh, I'm sure it's fine. I've got that test. Everything looks great. That test's lying to you. So I usually check this just by intentionally going back into my code while I'm writing my tests and just introducing a little bug for myself, like inverting a conditional statement so it does the opposite of what it should do, by hiding an element that's really key to my UI, or yeah, just like flipping around some logic and then checking if my test still passes. And I mean, there are a lot of times when I've done this and my test does still pass. And at that point, you go back, debug, have a look at what could have gone wrong here. I realized we've got part of my next bit of code up there. I was wondering what that was. It's because I fixed a typo about 5 minutes ago. So in this example, we're looking to check that some text doesn't appear in the document, but I've made a typo in that text that I'm looking for. So that test is always going to pass. There's no situation on earth where we get this sort of typo error appearing in my text, in my UI. And we've got another test here where we're checking that no error state is present, but maybe we've not waited for our network call to even finish. So how would we get an error state? We're still in the loading state. And I see this one done a lot because it's quite an easy thing to forget, and it will pass because, you know, the test will say, yeah, there's no error state here, but there is a loading state. So just to recap what I've kind of talked about, we want to write clear unit tests that can help out future developers who are reading your code. We want to cover not just the happy paths, but the unhappy paths, the error paths, the edge cases. We want to use appropriate selectors and get accessibility baked in for free. Always consider, do I actually want to mock this functionality? Is that useful to me? Or am I just making my life a little bit easier and actually taking away from the value of my tests? Want to keep tests independent of each other so they're not influencing each other and causing unpredictable, flaky failures. And just make sure those tests fail, like I was just saying. That is all. I've just got a couple of like references in here for like things that I mentioned. So quite Googleable is Millicent's talk if anyone wanted to look into more information about mocking. And there are some really great blog posts by Kent C. Dodds about React testing library and just how to use it most effectively. So I thought I'd share those. But yeah, thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you so much, Ellie. Great talk. Very well spoken. A lot of good tips. Definitely will follow some of them. Nice one. I think, oh, nice. I love this. Thanks a lot. So I will just pop that QR code back into one of the slides for a second, because if you are interested in making some questions to Ellie to discuss about something about her talk at the very end of our event, just scan the QR code, place your questions on Slido. You can also do them in person if you actually feel brave tonight, or just type them there. So let's go for the second talk with Ava. I'll just give you some space while I introduce you so you can set up your computer. So Eva flew all the way from Croatia to come here and talk to us. But that's nothing, because this lady actually is always doing sports, traveling, Googling flights. She played volleyball for like 10 years. And other than that, on her work time, she's actually a React developer at Q Agency in Zagreb.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Eva. I don't have first slide about myself, so I'm gonna tell a few facts about me. Not fat fact, but facts. I love sports. I was playing volleyball for 10 years. Nowadays I'm playing padel or volleyball, but it's just with friends. It's chill vibe. I also love traveling. That's my biggest passion, as Claudia already said. And I have amazing friends who came here to support me. They're all my travel buddies. Please one clap for them. They deserve it. And that's all about me. Now I'm gonna go to the topic. So today I'm gonna talk about Teaful library. As their documentation says, it's tiny, easy, and powerful React state management library. I don't know if anyone maybe used it before, heard about it. No, okay, so that's something new, that's good. So first, to show you what I will cover in this presentation. So first I'm gonna introduce you to React, then we will talk about the benefits of Teaful, sorry. Then I'm gonna talk about Redux and Teaful, and how to manage the store, how to modify the store. At the end, we will talk why I think we should use it. And at the end of the presentation, we will have a short demo to show you how it works. Okay, introduction. So Teaful was introduced in 2021. First, it was called Fragmented Store. Then it got renamed to Frag Store. And at the end, they called it Teaful. This is their logo. Teaful is tiny. It's less than 1 kilobyte, so it will make your project much more lightweight. That's one good thing about Teaful. Teaful's goal is to be very easy to use and customize, and you will not have to write as much code as you write in some other React state management libraries. It's also very powerful, and you avoid many unnecessary re-renders, while the performance of your website gets better. Some benefits of Teaful is that it's more maintainable, because you don't have to write a lot to do a simple thing. Either you don't have to write a lot to do a complex thing. So if you use it also in large projects, they will be more maintainable and they won't grow in code. Also, one plus is if your project becomes complex, you can also switch to some other Redux or anything with only small changes in code, because Teaful is really few lines of code. It's really easy to change it. You're also able to consume and update non-existent store properties and define them on fly. So you can first create an initial store without anything, and later you can add as much properties as you want. It also works with nested properties. You can manipulate any property whenever it's in the store. Also, you can have multiple stores. You don't have to, but you can choose. And then you can rename the hooks with more personalized names. You're also able to use customized updaters. So if you want several components to use the same updaters, without re-implementing them, you can predefine them with the get store helper. There is also an after update function to make an optimistic update. So when you update the store and save the value by calling the API, if the request fails, you revert it to the previous. It gets reverted to the previous value. Okay, now we will talk about Redux. I choose to compare it with Redux because I think a lot of you heard about it or used it, you know about Redux. So this is how Redux code looks like. It's just a counter, nothing special here, but you need to, of course, first install it. Then you need to have a reducer function. You have actions. You need to create a store, and then you need to connect component to the store. And you can see on the right side how the code looks like. And now I'm going to show you the same thing made in Teaful to see how less code you have. So this is the same thing. I think it's visible right away that this is much more simple. So with Teaful, it's the same thing. You need to install it, then you're creating the store. And you only have to create the store, and then you can subscribe to store and change whatever you want in the store. So there is no selectors, reducers, providers. It's very simple. Each store has to be created with create store function. So this function returns all the methods that you can use to consume and update the store properties. Okay, how to manage the store in Teaful? So we have use store hook. It's recommended to use it, and it works as a proxy hook to indicate exactly what portion of the store you want. So actually with this hook, we are subscribing to one part of the store. And this is the part I told you about before, unnecessary renders. So we are, the components that are re-rendering the components that only that part of the store that you changed. So if you change, for example, here you change the price, not all the components will re-render, but only the components which have price inside of them. This is example how to create the store. So you can have an initial store, or you can have an empty one, and then later on define the properties. And on the right side, I'm showing you how to subscribe or change username or price. So here you can also see that it works with nest properties. So you can just change something. You can just change the price. You don't have to change everything. So you just subscribe to that part of the store. To modify the store using helpers, we have two things. So we have get store helper and set store helper. Get store, it works exactly like use store, but with some differences. So it does not make a subscription. It's no longer a hook, and you can use it as a helper whenever you want. It will not register events that are executed after a change. So for example, if you just want to take something from the store, you can use get store to take that value and work with that value. And set store helper is here to modify the store inside or outside our components. In this example, we are resetting the store count or name. Okay, the store count or name. Also very easy. So we are just taking the piece of the store we want to reset, and it just like a one-liner. You can see how easy it is to make it. Okay, you can also do it with high-order components. It's called with store. It's a wrapper of the use store for non-functional components. This is something I didn't use because we are using functional components now, but just for you to know that there is an option to use it with classes. Okay, at the end, to tell you a few words why I think you should use it and why I used it in the first place. So on my last project, we worked on video streaming platform, and we really needed it to be very lightweight. That's why we used Preact. I don't know if you used it. Preact is actually used to be for lightweight projects where performance needs to be perfect. And that's why we needed something like some library, state management library, which is also lightweight. And Teaful is that. It's very simple to work with it. It's very easy to learn it. I never heard about it before, and I need few hours to catch it up and to use it. It's used with React and Preact. It's the same package. That's also a good thing. I think the biggest plus here is that there is no re-rendering issues. So, for example, if you have some junior in your team who actually doesn't know a lot about how re-rendering works in React, you are, let's say, more sure to give him to work with Teaful because he really don't need to take care of those things. Now I'm gonna show you the demo. So this is just a simple counter. We have a Redux and Teaful card, so we can increase and decrease the count. Nothing special. I'm doing the same things with both. I'm just gonna show you how does it look in code. Okay, just to show you in the code, so you can here see we have two folders, Redux and Teaful. In the Redux folder, we have actions, action types, and components where I have the card. And there is also reducer and store. In the Teaful, we have only component where is card and the store. This part where we have the card is almost the same, but we need with Redux we need to use dispatch function. The Teaful, that's not the case. We just subscribe to the store and use it down there. But I wanted to show you, you can see from the folders, with Teaful we have this. So here we are creating the store, and then we are using hooks and helpers to modify it later on. And with Redux, so we need to define actions. We have action types, and then we have reducer function. And inside of that, we need to define all of that for it to work. And afterwards, then we have store. So store files are actually almost the same, but here with Redux, we need to have action types, and reducer, which is also very simple now when it's just a counter. But when you have a lot of things with Redux, your reducer can become just more and more complex, and you can maybe get stuck with it. While with Teaful, it's really easy. So just subscribe to the items to your store and define, just change or modify, update, whatever you want to do with it. And that would be all from me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Eva. It looks much greater than Redux, I have to say.
Yeah.
Cleaner, drier code.
It is.
Simpler, easier life. Let's use it. Let's get rid of Redux. I didn't say it. Well, I guess now it's time for pizza. We have a 30 minutes break. Just another time reminder, QR code, questions, doubts, comments, anything, just pop them in there. Oh, hold on. Don't forget that you can go home. Don't worry. You didn't do anything wrong. You can keep going with what you were doing. Other than going back with a lot of React, we also can go back with a goodie bag. So don't forget to pick up your raffle tickets over there with Victoria inside the cup. So basically she explained me, you will pick up a ticket. You have a double number in it. You rip it off, keep yourself your number, and then put the other one back into another bag. I think I said it right? Okay, let's go for pizza and some talks, and then let's come back at 1:15, right? Well, we're all here, so. Okay, sorry. Got a little detail extra that I have to tell you before we start with the third talk. So hope you had a nice break and you did a bit of networking. I actually got to meet another Italian, which is good. And some people that actually came for the 5th time to the ReactJS Girls. So very pleased. I have to add some additional information about the amazing multitasking QR code that we have that does everything but pasta. But you also can, if you are interested to actually come and give a talk at the next ReactJS Girls, we have openings and we would be actually very happy to talk to you about it. Be aware this is actually a very informal and easy peasy meetup, and it's open to experienced, that's such a hard word to say, experienced speakers, but also any experience of all levels. So don't refrain from applying. If you scan the QR code, I think you can access a form for applying for a presentation. Also, if you want to get involved for hosting, sponsoring, or anything, just come and talk to us at the very end of the event, to any of us that has the YLD t-shirt. Does the QR code does anything else that I have to mention? I think that's good. Oh, another thing. Please remember to hashtag ReactJS Girls and also YLD on all your Twitter comments, Facebook, Instagram, anything. So just remember to hashtag us. Okay, I'm gonna shut up now and give the stage to actually a much better talk. So I want to ask Benny Zuffolini to join us here for the 2nd or 3rd time. She just mentioned me that actually she gave her first talk in 2019 in New York at the DSL. So we're really pleased to have her back here. Okay, Benny is Director of Product Design at Pearson's Education. And she will be giving us a very insightful talk, which I will let her present.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's on. Oh, everyone can hear me, I'm assuming so, because I'm getting an echo. Amazing. Hello, everyone. Yes, this is not the first time I speak at YLD stuff. My very first talk, actually, very first public talk was in 2018 in New York at the DSL on top of the Freedom Tower. So just imagine the cold sweats that I had. Like, I was with people like GitHub, like, I still don't fully understand how that happened. But yeah, I've come a long way. Hopefully my talks now are a little bit less stuttery. So first of all, I understand that I'm not exactly a React person. I have in my days built a design system, so I fully understand where you all come from. But yeah, no, I'm not a developer. I'm more of a designer. I'm actually more in leadership now, and I'm talking to you about something that is not React.js related, but it's relatable. So hopefully you'll get something useful out of it. Further introduction, that is me. I still had hair. That was beautiful, beautiful December last year. And this is Miles. He's my bunny. He's my latest bunny, my fourth. Funny enough, Miles has told me a lot about inclusivity, because bunnies are prey animals. So it's not the same as having a cat or a dog who are predators. With bunnies, you have to grow a completely different mindset where you need to make space for them to feel like they can trust you. The trust is not given. So I felt like it was topical, and also he's fucking cute. Sorry, I know I was supposed to swear. Right. Before we start, around here, think of the past week or so. Raise your hand if you've been involved in a conversation about remote working. Fair. What about, like, is it okay to have your camera off in Zoom meetings? Okay, so you're all experts of inclusivity in the workplace. Awesome. Now, I am purposefully not going to talk about company policy. Firstly, because it's way too depressing. We can talk about it at the pub later. But second, because it's not that useful. We usually don't have much control over those. What we do have control over is how we act and how we influence the people around us, our teams, our stakeholders, our managers, and colleagues. So let's start with the opposite of inclusivity. So this is kind of where I like to start when I talk to people that are not necessarily in the same super left-wing groups of LinkedIn that I'm in, which are a bit of an echo chamber these days, to be fair. When we think about inclusivity, let's flip it on its head. Let's think about excluding people, because we can all relate to that. We've all been excluded at some point. We all know that it sucks, that it's heartbreaking, it's unfair. We probably thought, what's wrong with me? Or if we love ourselves in the right way, we probably thought, what's wrong with them? At the very least, we've all been the kid that gets picked last in the lineup at soccer, basket, whatever it is. Thing is that when we're kids, that is still awful, but, you know, more or less it's just stupid children being stupid children, and we can survive that. We grow up and it gets better. But when we're adults, being excluded can threaten our livelihood. If we're not in the room or not in the conversation, in the group, in the clique, we don't get access to the same opportunities. We don't get access to the same learning, the exposure, the jobs. And I feel like the whole internet focuses a lot on let's fix this for recruitment so that people can get the jobs. That's super important. But it doesn't actually stop there. You might get into the job, but then you're in and you still don't get involved in the call that you should have been. The dynamics don't necessarily change. And this is where we want to talk more around mindset. So what I particularly like to think about is what we have control over. And unfortunately, excluding, including, these are behaviors, and so everyone can do them. They're not necessarily always at the hands of managers or people in position of power. Everyone can kind of exclude everyone, even unconsciously. Actually, most of the time, it happens not by accident, but without intention necessarily. It just happens. It's habits. It's human. So, who knows what this is? Go. Yeah. Which one? Yes. Awesome. It came out last week. I haven't, if I could not go to meetings to play this, I would. But also, what this actually is, sure, it's the character selection screen. But think about it. This is a team. This is a well-balanced team. It's a team of individuals that have unique strengths, unique abilities, and they're different, but they're complementary. They, if you have this entire team together, you can slay all of the demons in Sanctuary. That's the point. Sanctuary is the realm of Diablo 4, just to clarify. This concept is at the basis of every co-op game ever created. For good reasons. It's also at the base of most manager trainings and books about hiring successful teams. You need to have different abilities to mix and match so that they can compensate each other and elevate each other. It's definitely in every single diversity blog post that has ever been written. But when we think about it, these people, would they actually get along if they weren't piloted by a controller? Let's just imagine. So you've got individuals that come from different backgrounds, different cultures, different value systems, probably different languages, different neurotypes. I'm pretty sure the druid is autistic is my favorite, obviously. Yeah, these are people that by nature and nurture don't really have anything in common to collaborate with each other. The only thing that they have in common is that they're part of a team with the same task: to slay demons. And maybe they like vodka. They do look like they like vodka, but that's neither here nor there. So let's think about it this way. Obviously, I'm a druid. Like I said, they have pets. If it's like 5 p.m. and I haven't finished my task, my ticket is still open. I need to get someone to help me. Who do I pick? I want someone that will just kind of get it. I don't have a lot of time to explain. I want to go home. Who do I pick as a druid? To be honest, I would probably pick another druid if I could. It's not a smart thing. It's natural thing. Without any other druid, I would probably go with a barbarian. Don't like her too much, but feels like kindred spirit, more or less. And then what happens is, let's say that's successful. We smash the ticket. Next time it happens, I'm probably going to go to the barbarian again, because by that point, it's proven we work well together. We're a good team. They're familiar. Great. And then I do it again and again and again. And at that point, the necromancer, the rogue, and that other person in the middle that I didn't even bother screenshotting have been excluded from all of my conversations from this little team, this little clique that I formed, which is now an echo chamber that just repeats the same ideas to each other all the time. Fun. The thing is, we as humans do this. It's spontaneous. If we're woke, we're training ourselves not to do it because we recognize that that's not the smart thing to do. But by instinct, that's where we go to. It's not even something that we shouldn't necessarily be ashamed of per se. I'm very much a fan of take shame out of the question. It's just not good. We should recognize it. We should raise awareness. We should try to change. Because, yeah, me and my barbarian buddy, we might have fun for a while, but we're not really gonna do any groundbreaking work or super creative problem solvings after some time. And that kind of sucks. And it sucks for the others because they never even had the opportunity. So what can we do about it? That's the question. I want to share with you my absolute favorite tool of the moment. Yes, sorry, I went from a dark screen to a very light one. I didn't have a choice. It's a photo. Forgive me. So this map comes from a book called The Culture Map. I am not a big book reader, but this book is great. So I am actually reading it. And just FYI, it's on Blinkist. So you can get it there. I'll tell you a little bit about it. This book talks about how to do business globally and stuff like that. But this map takes different layers of communication, and it lays them out really, really neatly from one extreme to the other of the scale. One of my favorite example is going back to the top. It's communication, as in communicating information. There's low context, there is high context. In the context of cultures and countries, the thinking, the research is about if you come from a country. By the way, I'm not necessarily talking about birthplace. I'm talking more about whatever had the most influence to you. But yeah, if you come from a country that has low context, that would be like America, like the whole of the US or the UK. So places that are generally multicultural, places where the people have changed over time, they mixed a lot, so there isn't that much in common. There isn't that much history together. People that come from places like that are normally used to be more explicit in their way of communicating. They will give a lot of details. They will ask a lot of questions. They will send you bullet points after your meeting to remind you what the actions were, etc., etc., etc. Then you take the opposite and you take someone from a high context country or culture, and that's someone like Italy, the Mediterranean, Japan, China, places that have a very strong history and have learned to understand each other's body language, hints, reading between the lines. The science behind this is quite fascinating. I found out that French has like 70,000 words compared to the UK, which has like 500,000. So they even use less words because they don't need as many to communicate with each other. So now you take that person, and that's a person that will absorb what you tell them, will say, cool, and then disappear. You put these two people in a room together. The person from the low context country will be like, awesome, so this is what we're going to do exactly. Okay, cool, you got it? Yes. Okay, but you got it, right? Like, I can expect, like, there will be updates. Sure. That's a minefield of anxiety for the explicit person. From the implicit person, they're probably going to feel really patronized. Like, yes, I got it. I told you, I got it. Stop repeating that. But one thing that they definitely have in common is that in that situation, they're all thinking the same thing about each other. What a dick. I don't like them. I don't wanna. Take me out of here. And that's because, again, as humans, we are protagonists of our own story. We have this tendency to think that other people's behaviors are related to us. They're doing something to us. And they could choose any other behavior, but they're choosing that one specifically for us, and maybe specifically to annoy us. That depends on like what your mood of the day is. So yeah, this is the crucial point. By default, we don't give a lot of benefit of the doubt. We like to think we do. We try to do it, like depending on where you are on the awakened scale, whatever you want to call it. We really try, but it's just not instinctive. The way we improve this is, well, tools like this, obviously, because it's a lot of fun. Also, if you try to map yourself, you're going to like break your brain. I'm originally from Italy and now I moved to the UK. I have no idea where I sit on that scale. I'm also autistic, so I sit in another part. Like it's fantastic, but also it doesn't truly matter, because all it matters is where am I in relation to the person I'm speaking to in that moment. So are they being purposefully not clear because they're hiding something, or are they used to more implicit conversation? Which doesn't mean that I have to be okay with that, by the way. It just means they're not doing it to hurt me. I can very much say, hey, just FYI, could you elaborate a little bit, please? Because I like to dig into details. Like there is a matter of boundaries here, of understanding what you need from the other person, do a little bit of education. In an ideal world, obviously, there is also the burden of education. You know what? I'm not going to get into that. But yeah, it's about trying to rewire our brains a little bit. And most of all, yeah, assumptions are the enemy of learning, growth, collaboration. And it's not so just like that. It's very simple. I don't have that much more to say. This is my pitch. I'm a designer, and that means I'm also part researcher. When I go out to do some UX research, I have to get into that mindset where I need to erase my biases. I need to take every customer as an individual that I want to learn from. I can't say, no, that they did that thing and that thing is stupid. I have to just be curious. And then I suddenly realized, hold on, all of the training that I did for that thing, if I actually apply it to the people around me, I probably have an easier life, and they probably do too. So, moral of the story, no judgment, no problems. Funnily enough, when I put that photo on LinkedIn, I didn't get that many likes. So that's it. That's my little pearl of wisdom. Thank you very much. A little bit more bunny. It's been a pleasure. I have no idea how much time I made.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very insightful. We all need to learn from this, for sure. I guess you still have a bit of time also to place some questions either through Slido or in person to Benny as well. So I say, let's just put here like maybe 3 chairs, and we all sit here all together, and we try to go through the questions that anyone can have or that have put through the platform.
So this one's for Benny. I wanted to ask, like, have you ever dealt with microaggressions, and like, what advice would you give to somebody who has to deal with microaggressions?
This works, yes. Absolutely. I mean, I think I've been in the tech industry for about 15 years, and it did not look like it does now. It was even worse. So yes. I find this question difficult. It's not the first time I get it, but the reason why I find it difficult is because my instinct is fight back, which is obviously not necessarily the most productive thing. The diplomatic answer is it's an opportunity for education, but we also all know that's tiring and unfair. So I think what I do right now is I send memes that explain more eloquently than I can why what they just did to me was stupid, and leave enough ambiguity that it could be taken as funny. Or I practice some little one-liners, you know, the type that is funny, people will laugh, and that person will feel stupid and won't do it the next time. It's a bit convoluted. I don't think we nailed the algorithm for that situation yet. I really wish we would. But yeah, exclude them. No, that's absolutely not the right. Sorry. I hope it helped. I feel for you.
Thank you. It is difficult. Like, it happens to everyone, and you just want to know, like, I'm not alone. So,
how do you deal with microaggression? I mean, we're all.
Depends on how I'm feeling. Am I feeling like fighting back, or am I feeling like just let this one slide and punch a pillow or something instead?
How much do you think actually a microaggression is done on purpose, or someone just spits something out wrong and it sounds like it's a microaggression?
Well, that's the thing. Very often it's not done on purpose. Like, most of the time it's not done with the intention of hurting. But it also doesn't mean that it's an accident. It's usually like a bad habit. And so, I mean, I have also said things like, you know, I don't love that you just said that, and just walk away. It is something that ideally you would want to address. But one thing actually that I would say, I've personally often gone down the social justice warrior path and tried to change the mind of the people around me and try to make the company culture better and stuff like that. I commend people that still do that, but it's really tiring and it leads to burnout. I would say, unless you're in a position of power, don't feel the need to, like, if you feel up for it, sure. Otherwise, find someone else, because it shouldn't be your problem to deal with. Find HR, find your manager, talk to other people. That's probably the main thing. Just talk to other people, because there's safety in numbers.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else that wants to make a question? I have a few here I can go through. All right. I'll go for one question from Maris to Ellie. Given, when, then is a good naming convention when describing tests. Given, when, then convention comes from BDD. Should developers learn more about BDD?
This is a really interesting question. So for those who don't know, BDD is behavior-driven development, which I had to remind myself for this because I'm always terrible with acronyms. I've often found behavior-driven development useful for like things like writing tickets, because you can kind of be really clear on like, you know, given that I'm a cat lover, I can use this app to get a picture of a cat so I can feel a little bit better about my day. And I think that in itself can then lead to making it a bit easier to write tests, because you've already got your test cases written down in front of you. So I think, it definitely doesn't hurt to learn a bit more about behavior-driven development. I say it just depends on whether it's something you find useful, whether it's something that people around you find useful. But I think it can, if you can if you've got things like user stories and acceptance criteria, sometimes once you have that, that's your test case is already half done for you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm actually going to go for another question for Ellie, given that we have it here. And you do you want a break? I can jump onto another one if you want. Do you have an example of a complex component where you had to mock it out, since that was mentioned in the mocks list?
Ooh, I definitely do. I think at my last company, we have often a situation where we have this big parent component that everything else kind of comes out from. I remember a situation like that in my last company where there was just no choice when I came into that component. There was no way I could mock every single network call that children this probably told you something about the architecture, that maybe we shouldn't have had this, parent component with then children just going all the way down forever. But I think scenarios like that where you really had to think about 10 layers deep what APIs are being called, sometimes it is just easier to mock out that component. But it's something I try and avoid.
Okay, thank you so much. We have a question here also for Eva, which I lost in the meantime, but I'll find it. Just give me 1 second. So here we go. Best thing about Redux is the time travel and ability to capture actions in logs. In Teaful, how would you capture state changes for auditing logs?
Okay, so Teaful also has their dev tools, and they're really good, and you can check their everything, so you can see how the state is changing, who changed it, all the stack trace. So it's pretty awesome. Yeah, you can do it.
Okay. Nice one. Do you want to go for another one? Yeah, shoot it. How close is Teaful to Context API?
Teaful is close to Context API, and I love Context API, but Teaful still is, I'm not sure I would say better, but there is this re-rendering issue if you have in your context, if you have more properties, and you have, for example, age and username or something else, and now you want just to change age, all the components that also have username will re-render, which is actually necessary while we are doing that. And then you can solve it in context by defining context for all the properties separately. But I think it's, taking you more time. You can, with Teaful, you can have the store with all the properties, and it will render only that part of the store. So I think it's a big plus. And also you don't have to have provider and consumer in Teaful, what you need in context. So it's still, I think it's more simple.
Okay. Teaful all the way.
Yeah.
You're definitely selling it well.
Thank you.
So we have here a question for Benny as well. Making assumptions and projecting them is always a risk. Yet, how to unlearn this practice?
Whoa, deep. So First off, we can start with thinking that making assumptions and doing projections, again, it's human. It comes from survival instincts. So yes, unlearning it is messy. I think that I studied acting for a while, and that was the time where I think I wrapped my head around it the most, because with acting, you have to temporarily completely set aside who you are and completely set yourself in the shoes of someone else, their motivations, their intentions, their words. It's literally not you, you're acting another person. And like something does click when you have to quash your instinct to be you to portray another human. There's something about that. There's lots of exercises that actually come from the acting and drama world, but they're used in coaching and in training for leadership. It just starts with recognizing that it's difficult. It is difficult. It is hard. Otherwise we would be doing it already. So recognizing that it's hard but needed, it's an amazing first step. And then there's a ton of tools out there. I love going on Reddit and reading real life stories of people that are completely different from me, or watch them on TikTok because they're incredibly funny. So they are entertaining me while I'm learning a lot about these different perspectives that I wouldn't have known about otherwise. When you start accumulating that sort of background of information, it becomes a little bit more natural to interpret what's in front of you differently. There's a quote from, what was it, Einstein? It's like, we can't solve problems with the same mindset we had when we created them. So yeah, deep, sorry.
We all had a moment like, oh, wow. Okay, well, let's go to the next question. Thank you, Benny. I'm actually going to make one to Ellie. It's kind of like the eternal dilemma when you're doing unit testing. When is the moment to stop? So you can do so much with React testing library. You can potentially test any single CSS row that is applied to a component to have style or to have attributes. There's so much potential in there. But it gets to a point in which continuing testing might not be, investing your time into doing it might not be the best way to invest it. So you need to kind of like set a boundary and say, that's the moment, that's enough. How do you determine that?
That's also deep.
Is it? Yeah. Write a book or something.
Yeah, it's really going to depend on what it is you're trying to test. I mean, you mentioned like CSS styles. I never test my CSS styles. Which, I mean, I know some people might, but for me, it feels like it's not the best use of my time. Like maybe we can catch things like that with like screenshot testing, like regression tests. Like there are other tools that kind of work a lot better than checking specific CSS styles. You can use like code coverage tools that will just tell you, you've got 100% of your conditional branches tested. That's good. And that's, testing the JavaScript or the TypeScript or the React. Again, it doesn't cover the CSS. And that can usually be a good measure that, you don't go beyond 100%. Yeah, for me, it's just exhausting the flows. Like, for me personally, yeah, it's usually about logic. Like, that's why I'm doing the unit tests. It's what are the different inputs I get? What are the different outputs? But yeah, it's going to depend on what you're making. Like, I know, if you're doing like a mathematical function, do you test every single set of numbers you could possibly get in there? No, I tend to go with kind of the numbers at the very edge of the range you're expecting, whatever side of that, a number that seems like a very average case, and then a number that is maybe a little bit weird, like a little bit funky in some way. I can't think of a funky number, but I'm sure there are some. But yeah, usually you can get fairly broad coverage just by getting the very edges and kind of a couple around the middle. But yeah, it's kind of it's not so much a science the way I do it.
Okay, thank you. That's well explained. What else do we have here? Let me see. Oh, actually, this one is for you too. How do you use accessibility in selectors?
Oh yeah, so there's a lot of like good stuff on this online that can probably explain it better than I can try and do it in words. But basically the get by role selector that comes with React testing library, if I had a div that has an on-click function and I tried to say, oh yeah, get by role button that says give me a cat picture, and actually the button I think I'm talking about is just a div with an on-click, like that's not going to show up in my test because that element doesn't have the role button. So that's a really good one. Yeah, there's the like screen dot get by alt text. There are things like get by input. I don't know exactly. Get by label, get by input, get by label text. It's get by label text. But there are basically a few different selectors. I think React testing library docs spell out quite nicely. But yeah, you don't even have to be testing accessibility specifically. You're already getting it. Although there are also tools for specifically testing accessibility as well.
Okay, thank you. I had another question here for Eva, which I again lost, but I'll find it. Actually, I'm going to read this one for Benny, which is kind of provocatory. In relation to the inclusivity talk, how are you enjoying this meetup where we have an all-female lineup?
Why do you do this to me? Do I respond it honestly or do I respond it diplomatically? I don't know. I'll answer it and then maybe you'll just, cut that bit if it's not okay. But I think if we want to strive for real inclusivity, there's a bit of correction that needs to be made first. So I've got personally no issue with the fact that we're still making some specific environment because we haven't had enough of those and we need to reset the culture a bit. I don't think that this will still be a thing in 5 years or 10 because if we did a good job, we won't need it. I have the same with neurotypes. There's so much labeling right now. I'm autistic and I have ADHD. Maybe I'm also dyslexic. Does it actually matter? Yes, because otherwise I don't get the right medicine. But should it? Probably no, because we should all just be taken as individuals. So it's like, this is fine right now. This is great right now. It's helping rebalance things. But I think it will naturally fizzle out. Or at least I hope so. Not for YLD. I mean, you guys are great. You can keep doing this forever. It's fine.
I'm not going to add anything to it because I think you could not have given a better answer to this question. So good job. There were another one for Eva. How does Teaful expose its state in the tree without provider? Through singletons?
Yeah, you don't need to have a provider with Teaful. You just need to create a store and use store hook or the helpers. I mean, you need to have use store hook and you need to create a store first, and then you can use it through the app normally. Yeah.
Okay. I think I'm actually checking the time, and I'm not sure if we still have time for other questions. I'm actually looking for Vicky. Do we? Okay. Can I pick some more? 10 minutes? 5 minutes? Okay. Anyone? 15? 50 minutes? Anybody else feeling brave now, wanting to add their pitch? Yeah? Nice. I don't have the special microphone here.
Sorry. Thank you. I have a question that is related to the testing as well, as you've mentioned accessibility and how there are tools that we can use to test out the accessibility of our app, like just using a screen reader. How do you feel, or how do you consider maybe? So let's say we have our component and we just defined everything from the area label, and we just know that it's gonna look good if maybe someone who's not able to use a keyboard uses our website. How do you handle this as well on your unit test, or on the test side of things as well? If we are, I mean, apart from using maybe a screen reader?
That's a really good question. So there are things like within testing libraries where you can run in your unit test, checking that there are no, I think it's the Accurx dev tools. And I'm looking at Sarah because I know she'll tell me if I'm wrong. Which will flag like if there are any accessibility violations in your tests. I don't know if that's the route I would always opt for in testing. I think I quite like the browser dev tools that you can get. So again, it's the Accurx, I believe it's Accurx. I can never remember the name of the companies that make things. Developer tools, which actually similar to like Redux dev tools or React dev tools or just Chrome dev tools. You can basically bring up the page you're working on, run this accessibility checker over it. It will tell you any warnings. It'll tell you the severity of them, like things like your image doesn't have any alt text, it will flag, or things like your input doesn't have a label. And that's something that I've found really useful, because while I'm testing what I'm working on, I'm also learning things that I didn't actually realize were accessibility violations, or things that actually, there are some, I can't remember what it was the other day, but something came up and I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that was an accessibility issue. Because I think we can get caught up kind of thinking about things like, oh, let's not put red and green next to each other, or, oh yeah, I should have some alt text, or, you know, like very basic ideas of accessibility. And so it's a good way to like learn as you go. But I think, the Accurx dev tools are one that I use. I don't know how you bake that into like a process at a company level. That's a question I would love the answer to. But that's how I bake it into my personal flow while I'm building new components.
Thank you.
Any other brave? No one? I'm actually going to go for the very last questions I have here, which is to all of you. How did you get to do what you do?
In what sense?
To be a senior product designer, probably at Pearson's education tool. How did you get to you got to your career to do?
Okay, a bunch of luck.
We always need a bit of it, you know?
Yeah. I was open to opportunities when the opportunities came. That's where I pat myself on the back. But I've had a good series of opportunities. Networking.
You always wanted to do this, or you deviated throughout your career?
No, I deviated a bunch of times. I'm pretty sure that there was a time where I swore that I never wanted to manage anyone, and now it's all I want to do, because I had a really shit manager at some point and I just wanted to learn to do better. So, you know, like you take you take your inspiration, you pivot. I'm a big fan of portfolio careers lately. So rather than trying to follow a linear path, actually list out in your CV all of those other things that you do that contribute to your skill set, because they're all important. They all matter.
That's interesting, because I was, sorry for interrupting, I was talking to someone during the pizza break, and they were like, oh, I have a lot of soft skills and other stuff, but I don't think they are taking into consideration. I'm like, no, that's not actually true. There's more and more people appreciating the fact that you have expanded skills on different sectors, or you have lived experiences other than specifically that one that is for the job you're applying for.
There's actually, I hire a bunch of people, and I hate the format of CVs. It doesn't let me see what these people actually do, what they're actually good at. So it's something that I hope that as an industry we can just completely refresh, because But back on the question, my latest job, for example, I had it because I was in a panel with someone
It was a neurodiversity panel. We hit it off really well, and then when he had a job opening, he called me. Hence why I'm like, yeah, luck, and staying open. And do a bit of soul searching, I guess. What do you actually like doing? Because could be that it's not the job you have, or not all parts of it, or not in that type of industry, or not in that type of company. And yeah, you can always pivot.
Am I next? Okay, so my pet to hear was really random, because I think my parents were the one that were shocked the most when I told them after high school that I'm gonna go to study computer science, because I never knew anything about computers, but I'm not sure what to study. I told my dad, like, I love 10 colleges, but I cannot like choose one because it's like I cannot. And the only thing that I knew then was that I wanna be able to travel and work, and I love that. And then I saw like IT, so maybe I can try this. But yeah, I never did programming before that, so it was just YOLO. Like, let's try this, and then I got stuck here, and yeah, I found a good company, and I really like it now.
Do you get to travel and work?
Yeah,
It's
all the
what-
time. So this is perfect.
It's actually what you wanted.
Yeah.
Nice one.
So in terms of getting into front-end engineering, I had quite a weird and windy route. So I did a completely unrelated degree, had a complete panic the summer after I graduated when I realized, oh God, what am I going to do with my life? I need to do something employable. Went, okay, I'll do computer science, because my dad kept going on about how he knew some really smart guys that did computer science and you could make good money. But I was like, okay, yeah, I need to move out of this house, so I guess I'll do that. So I did like a 1-year conversion course in computer science. I actually came out of that thinking I didn't want to be a developer. So I was doing Java, I was doing backend stuff. I didn't like it at all. So I came out and be like, oh God, no, I don't want to be a developer, and I don't want to work in a basement of some company. Like, I was thinking the IT crowd. But then I got a job in a I would say like a very corporate company doing cybersecurity, thinking again like, oh, maybe that'll be a cool and a good employable career. And I really didn't like that either. Really didn't get on with that at all. And I was kind of just doing some searching and kind of thinking, oh God, what do I do? Where do I go from here? Everyone I knew had graduated and gone on to them be a developer, like using Java. And I was like, I can't do that. Then I thought back to, I used to like making like one page, like fully just HTML websites, you know, just bright pink backgrounds, some comic sans, scrolling marquee, a photo that I could never position in the right place. And I thought, I kind of used to enjoy that. Why don't I see if I could do that kind of stuff? So I, in like the little moments I could kind of steal before and after work, I started playing around again with like HTML, CSS. Thought, okay, let's try JavaScript. Please don't be like Java, but with the word script on the end. Saw React, thought it was a cool word, and figured, okay, yeah, I'll try that one. From there was like, oh, yeah, I am having a good time. I am enjoying this. I was happy to wake up early. I mean, I wouldn't do it now, don't get me wrong, but I was happy at the time to wake up early in the morning to try and learn it. Yeah, I wouldn't code at 6 a.m. anymore, ever, for love or money. But yeah, and then spent a while searching for jobs, came across one it was very much by luck that I came across it. And then I think it was interesting what the note about kind of like soft skills and people maybe not appreciating them, because I think that was maybe what got me my foot in the door, was the fact I had, you know, I didn't have any professional experience using JavaScript. I taught myself in like a month. But I think I had some of that experience from jobs I had done in the past, and kind of I could communicate, and I was just going to give it my best shot, and basically just got my foot in the door that way. And then from there, yeah, just kept going. And after the first year, I was like, well, this is great. I don't hate it, which is the first time in a while I've done something for a whole year and not hated it. So yeah.
So a bit of luck and strong will.
Yeah.
And passion at the end of the day.
And figuring out what you actually like.
Yeah. Which seems easy, but it's not. Because we're put through questions and decisions when we're really young. What do you want to do when you're going to be old? And you're like, oh no, I don't even know what are the options other than being a doctor, engineer, sells flowers at the flower shop. Then you're like, you need to decide now for forever. And you're like, go through life and new things happen, new obstacles, new decisions. This goes wrong, this goes right. I actually like this, but I don't know how to do it. What am I going to do about it? But I mean, if you want it enough, or if you like it enough, it's doable with a bit of luck, of course, a bit of will, a bit of study, a bit of, can get there. So deep, isn't it? It's a deep set.
Very deep.
Okay, does anybody who wants to make some other question? Oh, he does.
Who knows? Yes.
I think we can then close the question and answer session off and head to the pub, have a beer, well-deserved beer. But hold on, because I still have to say some things. You need to stand me for another couple of minutes. I can't remember what I have to say at the end, but yeah. I was going to say that. Okay, well, thank you all. It was absolutely amazing for me, and I hope it was for you too. A lot of good talks, a lot of good insights, another great event. There will be more to come. So please, if you wish to participate, present, or contribute with organizing, hosting, sponsoring, just get in touch with us. We'll be around also at the pub where we have to meet, which I think I have the address here. Here we go. At the Horse and the Groom. There. Google Maps it, because I don't know where it is. So thank you so much again. Thank you for everyone who has organized. I'm not sure I know what I have to say when you show me that bag, but I think it is... Oh yeah, the numbers. I forgot. So, raffle time. Has everybody picked up tickets? No, she forgot. We have last minute ones.
I forgot. Can I participate?
Well, kind of want to. Just want to go to bed. Do we have background music, like drummers or something?
Something like Jeopardy. Like you need like a jingle, like a game show.
I can sing some Italian song, but I'm not sure I'm going to make everybody happy about it. A lot of people forgot about it. They went straight for the pizza. Can we say what's in the goodie bag, or it's surprise? We cannot? Surprise. We want to know what's inside. It's kind of like when an Amazon parcel gets home and you already know what it is inside, but you want to open it to see it. You're making us anxious, Vic. We want to know who won. How many bags do we have? 2? Oh, I don't want this responsibility. I'm going to get someone else to do it. They're going to blame you. I mean, if you win, you have to put it back. Or give it to me. No, I know that. Number 37 was the lucky one. Nobody? You what? Sorry, it's me. No. Nobody? Really? Did you pick up the... It was you? You lost your ticket. How dare you? Let's pick another one. You sure? Sorry. We're nothing super... I'm not going to say there were nothing super special inside it, because there is. Can you pick up one that didn't lost their tickets? 101. Who's the Ella? Where's the prize? Lucky day. Oh, Vic has it. No, that's just the paper one. I mean, I can give you the tickets if you want, but they're not really funny to bring home. I'm going to get someone else to pick this out. Why did you look on the other side, Jessica? You're trying to avoid it. Okay, you go and pick it. Number one. Number one is number one. Who's that? Is that you, Pete? No way! Nice. I don't want to know what's inside. I'll ask them later at the pub. Okay, shall we close it off? Everybody goes to the pub, have a drink? Oh,
Yes.
she's coming. Well, thank you so much, everyone, again. It was really great pleasure. See you at the next one. Don't miss out. Follow on Instagram or where we post it.